I'd love to begin our conversation with, 4 years ago, we were trying to figure this pandemic out. How long is it going to last? The ramifications. How did you end up making it through it? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
Well, fortunately for me, the job that I work during the daytime when I'm not trying to start my own business, I work for a software company, and uh, we were designed to do that turnkey. So it was very easy to just jump into the SaaS model. I've got an incredible home office set up at this point, and yeah, it's actually been good. So fortunately, in the situation that I found myself in, it was a real easy transition, and it saved me from having to travel 17 and a half miles in Denver traffic. But yeah, that also allowed me extra time since I don't have the 2 hours of commute every day. I've been able to, like I said, start my own business, go into a public speaking career. I still have a day job, but doing the public speaking, it allows me to be able to work wherever I want to. And then most recently, I just wrote a book having to do, actually, it covers a lot of that experience, not COVID specifically, but a lot of the experience about career transitioning and developing that resilient mindset to be able to achieve some goals.
So let's get to the brass tacks of what you do here in 2024 on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, I improve people's lives. That's the very short version of what I do. During the day, I work as a software sales manager, so I cover the entire eastern US. Doesn't make a lot of sense from Denver, but I'm the furthest east that we have. So I still run all the software sales that we do, but when I'm not doing that, I'm in front of audiences. I teach people how to think differently, how to establish goals, and do that in a different way than anything I've seen. I've studied a lot of different goal setting techniques, and I've heard a few that kind of allude to what we do, but I really get into the depth of how do you make sure that your goals are aligned with who you actually are. So really, I'm a teacher,
Yeah.
Joe. That's what I do.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
Believe it or not, I wanted to be an eye surgeon.
Wow.
But it was interesting. What you'll find when you read my book is I don't come from an educated family, and we didn't have that success mindset when I was growing up, and I really had to kind of forge my own path. After I graduated high school, which I did by the skin of my teeth, I tried going to college. I was pre-med. I was doing what I needed to do, but I didn't know how to succeed. I didn't have anybody to model that for me. There was no experience to base it on, and I didn't really have any mentors who would say it's worth the effort. So I dropped out at that point, joined the military because I needed some kind of education, and my career path has really been interesting. I actually got trained as an electrical engineer, not exactly eye surgery. Then I went into being a robotics engineer. I did that for 14 years. When I was in the energy sector, and when that collapsed in 2016, that's when I transitioned into software. So really, a lot of the career transitions that I've made have been just through circumstance.
Interesting.
But while I was doing the robotics engineering, I did go back and I got a degree. So I am the first person who's ever graduated with a college degree in my family. That was a nice thing to be able to put on my mantle. But there was so many different things I've learned through just the school of hard knocks that that formed me to be who I am, and to be able to think differently than the rest of my family heritage. Not to downgrade my family; they're fantastic people, but they didn't know how to make the right choices, so they couldn't guide me. I had to figure that out on my own.
So take me back to where you were born and raised and how you ultimately were the one that was different from your family. What were the seeds that were planted into you that made you drive harder, made you become an entrepreneur and see things in a different way?
Great question. Growing up, I actually was in a fairly abusive household. So, not fortunately, it wasn't physical or sexual abuse like we do see a lot of in the country these days, but Is psychological abuse. I was always told, JP, you're stupid, you're worthless, you'll never amount to anything. And I believed it, because when people that you are supposed to trust reinforce negative behaviors like that, it shapes who you are. The one redeeming thing is my dad was an entrepreneur. He actually was a carpenter for his career, and then he opened up for the last 19 years of his career. He ran his own business, and he did like interior carpentry. It was a very blue collar, extremely hardworking man. So I did have that piece modeled for me. So I knew what the entrepreneur or solopreneur mindset looked like and how to run a business. But coming out of that household and that upbringing with that belief that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't smart, I wasn't. Um, I had to have things revealed to me as I went through life. Like when I tried to join the military, I took the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And when you take that score, it scores between about a 30 and a 99 to be accepted into the military. And I expected a score of maybe 40 or 50. Can you imagine how surprised I was when I got a 99? I got a perfect score on a really, really difficult test. And that was the first indication that I had been lied to about my capacity.
Yeah.
And from there, it was kind of like laying a new foundation, starting from the ground up on building who I am.
So who's been a hero for you, an ultimate inspiration in your life?
Oh, I love that question. The first name pops to mind. Even though I did drop out of my first time through college, there was a guy there. He was a health and fitness instructor. His name is Mike Arnold. This guy was just, I don't know even what he did to do what he did to me, but something about him just drew out the extrovert in me, because I had such a poor self image growing up. I thought I was an introvert, and he corrected that somehow. I don't even know how he did it, but he was the first person really to have such a positive mindset, to talk about goal setting. And he was the first person to challenge me when he said that, what is your goal? And I said, I want to make $1 million. He goes, well, that's stupid. Why would you want to do that? What's your actual reasoning? That was the first time I'd ever been challenged on something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just interactions like that that it helped to flip a switch in my head. So he's one person. Of course, I've read all sorts of different authors who I can call my hero. Jim Collins, John Maxwell, those are just a couple that come to mind. And then I've had just some tremendous mentors who have walked in and out of my life over the decades. And yeah, Mike Arnold for sure is the number one person who really flipped that switch for me. Thank you, Mike. If you ever have an opportunity to see this interview, love you, man. But yeah, there's just been so many good people that have come into my life and helped me, and I just want to pay that forward.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational or fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
John Maxwell.
Okay.
Um, Leadership, I think, is something that leaders get, but not everybody gets. And I've started to understand that over the last decade. Prior to making the switch into software, I had the same mentality as my family, that leaders were just these evil men sitting in their ivory towers, barking out orders and getting overpaid for it. But I didn't understand the concept of leadership. And I started reading John Maxwell books about 20 years ago. And I kept seeing all these principles in his books. And it finally started to register as soon as I got into an environment where leadership actually cared about people, and they came alongside of them and really worked with them and coached them, as opposed to being bosses that just crack a whip and try to get people to do a task. I had some good leaders, and that finally woke me up to say, oh, this is real. So that caused me to read more of his books and really dive into what is leadership all about. Of course, there are so many other great authors on that subject, but I think at this point, John's written, what, 67, 68 different books.
Yeah.
Uh, and he is the epitome of what servant leadership looks like. And I think of anybody who has really inspired me from that angle, he would be the one that I would like to sit down and just really have a real nice cup of coffee with.
So, what has been your motivation every day to get up to do the work that you do consistently by pushing yourself, evolving as a human? What is that motivation for you every day to do this?
Great question. In my book, I talk about discovering your purpose. And over the last, I'd say, 8 years, I've really had an opportunity to become more introspective and find out what makes me tick. And writing the book really kind of congealed all of that into one thing for me. And really, at the end of the day, what my motivation is, my purpose for living and breathing is to uplift others. As I've moved into leadership positions, I'm a junior executive now, which I never thought that I would be able to claim. But as I approach my job, as I approach audiences, when I go to speak with them, or do workshops, if there's a way that I can work with you to improve some area of your life, whether that's your career, your family relationships, your interaction with your community, your self image, any of those different things, if there's a way that I can help you elevate that station, or draw the goodness out of you, man, that just wakes me up in the morning. I love getting up, and I love challenging other people to become better versions of themselves.
What's been one of your favorite client success stories so far?
Favorite client success story. It's actually that's a tricky question, because I meet people from all different walks of life, so it's hard to find just one. But I actually had lunch with a gentleman last week, and we started getting onto the idea of goal setting. And he actually showed me a picture. He's got um, a vision board, and he's got 9 different goals on it that he had pictured. And we were talking about the goal setting technique that I call wise goal setting. You're probably familiar with SMART goal setting,
Yeah.
and there's absolutely nothing wrong with SMART goals. But when you're aiming for the stars, you can't really put a time boundary on it. It doesn't feel realistic or attainable. So I had to develop something else that covers what Jim Collins would call a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? So when I was having lunch with him, I looked at his vision board, and I said, "Well, this is great. This is a SMART goal. This is a SMART goal. But why do you have this one?" And I picked one of his goals, and I started having a conversation about why his goals around it. And I just watched his face go into the state of shock. And he was like, "Wow, I never thought about it like this. I don't know why this is my goal." And this is just one example of many that I've had, where I call it the aha moment, when you're talking to somebody and you see the lights go on. They have that moment where they just say, "Oh, that makes total sense. Now I understand this." CJ, the guy that I was having lunch with last week, I watched that moment, and that was just one example of just, that's what motivates me and really makes me happy. And just, I want more of those experiences for other people. I could probably sit and list 100 of them, but
Yeah, absolutely.
every one of them is different.
So, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I've ever gotten. If my wife was in the room with me, if you look at my website, it's about thought leadership and humor. My wife would say, "Don't eat the yellow snow," which is, of course, great advice, but maybe not relevant for this. Um, to sum it up, I no, I'm going to go a different direction than where I was thinking. The best advice came about 25 years ago. Again, on that topic of leadership, somebody, and I can't remember who said it. I wish I could give them credit for this, but they use the phrase "leaders are readers." And I wasn't a reader growing up. I didn't like reading. I'm still a fairly slow reader, which irritates me. I thank God for audiobooks. I'm an audible learner, so it helps me. But even though I wasn't in a leadership position and I had a negative view toward leadership, for some reason, I just believed that statement. So I've read hundreds of personal growth books on dozens of different topics. And throughout my life, I've just become a student of learning. Like I love to learn. I love to challenge myself and get into topics that I don't know anything about. And leadership has been one of those topics that I've studied, but only recently in my career or my life gotten into. But it was because I chose to listen to that advice and I read so many books that finally, when I was in a position where leadership was at my doorstep, I was ready to take it on. And I was ready to go into an area where nobody else in my life, in my family or my history had ever really gone. Had I not gotten that advice, I don't know that I would be in the position where I am today.
Yeah. So of all of these things that you've accomplished, going against the odds, what are you the proudest of?
I am proud mostly that I've helped to change the legacy of my family. Like I said, I grew up in a psychologically abusive home. Um, I look at the family history, I look at the different generations within my family, and there was a lot worse or different. I don't know that one abuse is worse than the other, but there was a lot of physical abuse. There was a lot of sexual abuse. And then, of course, there was substance abuse that went along with all of that. And I can look at both sides of my family and I see the generations of that. So to be able to raise my kids, I've got two beautiful daughters. One of them just graduated high school with an associate's degree. The other one is one of the most intelligent human beings I've met. We just need to work on those social skills a little bit. But being able to raise my girls in a supportive, safe environment, to be able to shelter them, guide them, push them, and maintain their dignity, I think that is a huge transition from the life I grew up with to the life they've grown up with and where they can launch, as they move out of the house and they get husbands and start having kids of their own. They had something different modeled, but that was because I've gotten good mentorship, and I've chosen to follow the advice of some really tremendous people that have come into my life and helped me become the man who I am. I'm most proud of the fact that I'm changing my family's legacy.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am versus who other people think I am?
Yeah,
I would honestly just say that I am an extreme workaholic, because I know what my purpose is, because I'm so uh, passionate about life and what I can do to help other people. And even in my day job, I work as a sales leader, but I can't sell something I don't believe in. I have to find a solution and help solve people's problems. That really makes them better in their careers.
yeah,
And it's because of that that I'm a workaholic. I am an incredibly bad bored person. If I'm bored, something is going to be improved in somebody's life. That's just how it works.
yeah.
But at the same time, I love developing relationships. I am just a social butterfly. I love getting out into audiences and crowds and meeting who I'm talking to and finding out what their motivations are and really how I can help them improve. Like I view myself as a consummate servant. I love to get out and help people however I possibly can. And sometimes, Joe, that can be really challenging, because I might enter a crowd that doesn't agree with some of the things that I hold true in life. So I have to bend myself because we weren't all made the same.
Yeah.
So sometimes you've got to be a servant even to people who you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And it's challenging, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to learn and have some fun.
So if anyone wants to get your book, they want to hire you, reach out, learn anything more about your world, where's the good business?
Yeah. So thank you. You can find out more about me in the business at the-legacy.net. And it's all spelled out THEDASHLEGACY .net, not .com.net. And if they want to buy my book, it's actually coming out on Prime Day, July 16th on Amazon. You can get it in paperback, Kindle, or Kindle Unlimited. It is there now, but I'd really encourage everybody to go on Prime Day because we do have some specials that are going to start that day. You can get the Kindle for just 99 cents.
Okay, excellent. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you for your story. It's a wonderful one. I appreciate it.
Joe, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure. And I wish you all the success in the world, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Take care.
Take care.